Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 244, the Diocese of Newcastle edition. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm David Auld. Here in Australia, it's the 1st of September.
Okay, I hope all of you guys caught the episode that I spoke to David before. We're talking about a trial that's going on in the Diocese of Perth, actually the whole province, dealing with allegations of a cover-up, yellow envelopes, and from what we learned this week, a very forgetful Archbishop. And I thought, David just put an article on his website, I'll put a link to it right here, where he talks about what happened this week. And he puts on there a picture that a magazine down under put, where it had all the quotes where I do not recall, I don't recall hearing this, I don't recall seeing this, I don't recall saying this. And it's the whole image of basically the testimony of the Archbishop. For people who have not seen everything, spend a couple of minutes bringing us up to speed of what happened, and then tell us what happened this week.
Sure. So just for clarity, it's not a trial, it's a royal commission, which is basically a judicial investigation set up by the government here, and it's the Royal Commission into institutional responses to sexual abuse of children. So we're looking at all over the country, not just churches, but any institution, how they responded in the past to allegations and actual instances of abuse of children. Of course, obviously, as part of that, the churches get looked at, and the commission has been looking at various dioceses in Australia. Some dioceses get dealt with fairly quickly. So, for example, Sydney was dealt with a bunch of different dioceses down in Tasmania, Sydney, and some I think some southeast dioceses and Tasmania itself. That stuff was dealt with down there. But the Diocese of Newcastle has been a huge segment. Originally a week set aside, and then more time put, and then they returned the last on Monday and Tuesday for 2 more days. They were actually originally designated for the Roman Catholic Diocese of Newcastle, and we're not even done. We're not even done with the witness list there. It is just huge and extensive, and they actually adjourned at the end of Tuesday on Newcastle. So they're going to now start with Roman Catholic. They adjourned, and they're going to meet again on the 29th of November. The big issue.
So they've been going all over with this Royal Commission. Has any other diocese popped up like this one has?
No, nothing like this. I mean, other dioceses, we've seen instances of child abuse that have been acknowledged from the past, and there have been a number of people where it's been very clear they've behaved in inappropriate ways or have not handled the situation well. But there has been nothing compared to the amount of time, and quite frankly, I don't know how to describe it. Shenanigans sounds like too silly a word to describe just how ridiculous and actually ungodly some of the behavior was in the leadership of the diocese. They had files, for example, these infamous yellow paper envelopes, brown paper envelopes, which was a filing system the diocese set up for allegations of sexual abuse or similar items by priests and lay leaders. And there were more than 30 of these envelopes kept in a file. And that, for a long time, was the diocese's way of handling it, processing it. There was a ring of paedophiles in the diocese. There were people using a boys' home as a place to do it. There were the dean of the cathedral was defrocked eventually, but he was a very powerful figure. It boggles belief.
Well, I was reading some transcripts. The prosecutor says, "Answer the question." And, I'm waiting for this to follow through. Well, you can't handle the truth. And, one thing after another and after another. This is quite a bit of drama for, an investigation into church abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. So a number of witnesses, not least Archbishop Roger Hurft of Perth, who was, for a time, Bishop of Newcastle, and Bishop when a lot of these allegations came to light, and that's going to be what we'll talk about in a moment. But he and others, diocesan solicitors and a former chancellor and others, on a number of occasions, a counsel assisting the inquiry. So there are a number of lawyers There's the judge sitting on his seat, but there's also counsel for the inquiry, and then everybody else, of course, is entitled to bring their own counsel as well and cross-examine witnesses. But counsel for the inquiry on a number of occasions just saying, look, asking a plain question to get to the heart of a matter, and then getting sometimes obfuscation, one might suggest, from the witness.
So let's talk about the trial this week then, or bring people up to date since our last episode.
Yeah. So what happened was Roger Hurft, Archbishop of Perth, then Bishop of Newcastle, had previously been on the stand and been testifying, and we returned to him, and he gave testimony for one day. He talked about a great number of events and what had happened and how he dealt with it. And so the big story was his constant, I can't recall. I watched some of it live because it's been streamed live on the web, and all the documents involved are all in the public arena. Just time and time again, it seemed that he was happy to agree with something, but only because there was a third-party evidence that demonstrated it, because someone else had testified or a letter had been produced. Very few times did it appear he was able to agree to substantive facts on the basis of his own memory, and hence you get that brilliant, I mean brilliant as in clever, brilliantly clever front page on the Newcastle Herald on Tuesday morning, just with I don't recall, I have no recollection, I put it on my blog post, and maybe you'll link to it on your page. Sure. Really quite indicting. So Hurft continues through this, and then on the Tuesday morning he continues his testimony. It becomes quite clear that he's known about a whole bunch of allegations and really not handled them well. It becomes quite clear that at times his manner towards people making accusations could have been far better. Some of the letters that have been cited were described by counsel as quite legalistic, rather than being pastoral. So in one example, he has a meeting with someone making an accusation, and he says, "Look, I can't go any further unless this is made in writing."
Really?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Oh my gosh!
And it's alleged. Not in a really helpful way, not in a, look, I want to take this really, really seriously, I want to work this through with you now, could you help me by getting it down in writing, and that will really help me process this, and we can get this done and sort it out, and we will look after you. Not that way, I won't do anything until it's in writing. But then there's an allegation when someone else made a written complaint of abuse, but rather than taking it to the police, he then sought for internal legal advice in the diocese for how to deal with it. There's allegations he sat in on meetings when these envelopes were discussed, and again, he's well aware, or apparently well aware, because he has no recollection, but he's apparently well aware that these things are going on, and yet just really doesn't get to grips with it. Some suggestions that he was a little bit intimidated by some of the power brokers in the diocese, but at the end of the day, it did not look good for him. He finished his testimony with an apology. He asked for a moment to make a personal statement, and he apologized to the Diocese of Newcastle. He's recognised that he let them down and would have done things differently if he could do it again. That he's learnt a lot. That he assumed too much of priests. He's kind of one of those guys with a higher ontological view of the priesthood, and that may have played into it. Who knows? But look, it didn't go well for him. And
it didn't. But I hear he's one of the good guys.
Yeah,
I hear that we're not persecuting a person who's deposed 400 or 700 priests here. This is a guy who's basically a good guy, caught up in a situation where he just wasn't paying attention.
Well, perhaps even worse than that. At times, deliberately chose not to pay attention. Deliberately chose not to know things that he probably knew he should have known. But you're right, in terms of the basic intent, I think it would be fair to Roger Hurft to suggest it wasn't a deliberate attempt to deceive here. It was more, dare I use the word, ineptitude than anything else. He was out of his depth. Out of his depth. But the argument is that the volume of what was in front of him was such that he just had to do something about it, and he didn't, to the extent that he should have. Yeah, but he is one of the good guys. He's well respected. It's really interesting. I've obviously chasing story. I've found a number of senior figures in the Anglican Church of Australia all around the country, which is what I tend to do when these big things happen. One of the key themes that's actually really interested me is people have a great deal of affection for him. He is seen to be one of the good guys, and a man of honour, and someone of integrity. And so it's a bit of a shock. It's even a shock in Newcastle. He was well loved when he was bishop in Newcastle. That can't be said of maybe some other bishops of Newcastle, but this is a man who was really well loved, who loved the area, and the people loved him. So it's a bit of a shock for them to actually hear just how he really dropped the ball on some of this stuff.
So the $1 million question is, what now? Some people say time to step down. Some people have hinted maybe he should step down. I haven't seen any outright calls step down. What's going on?
Yeah, so nothing in public. I published a piece this morning, which just before you and I filmed this piece, I published a piece where I've gone through the issue, and I think I state there I wouldn't be surprised if he does step down. I think it would be the honourable thing to do. But look, he's his own man. I think what would be really bad for the church is if the cries for resignation kept going, and he waited until the report from the commission to decide what to do. The report of the commission in regards of his actions, I think, will be pretty damning. I think that is clear now. It will be pretty damning. And I wonder, even some people have been chatting about the possibility that this is a criminal offence, because it actually is in New South Wales a criminal offence not to report to the police a serious crime, and these are clearly serious crimes. Interestingly enough, for clergy or psychiatrists or doctors, people in those positions, because of their unique relationships they have, it's up to the Attorney General to decide whether to prosecute. But the matter still is there. It looks like a criminal offence. So what should he do? Well, look, I think he is a man of honour, and my self-understanding is that better to go early for the sake of his own integrity, for the sake of just clearly signalling that he recognises that the errors on his part were of a magnitude that means he can't continue. It's really interesting. We have had a resignation like this before. So as I mentioned to you previously, the Governor General of Australia, Peter Hollingworth, had been Archbishop of Brisbane when allegations were made to him, and he had not dealt with them well, and that came to light when he became Governor General of Australia later on. It's actually a ceremonial figure as the Queen's representative in Australia. So it's the nearest we've got to a head of state that's not the Queen herself. Anyway, he had that position. He was well respected before that, but it came to light that he had not dealt with these things well. By his own admission, he was out of his depth. He also apparently had let a priest who he knew to be a paedophile carry on in ministry, and he had to go. And he eventually went. And he went actually far too late, and it brought some discredit to the office that he was in. Well, I think by any reckoning, the stuff that is now before us through the commission that Roger Hurft has not dealt with well is exponentially greater. And I choose my words deliberately. I recognise what they are. These are massively greater in volume than the stuff that Hollingworth resigned over. So it would be hard, even if you compared those to think that Roger Hurft's position was tenable now.
So, as far as Roger Hurft is concerned, there's a pause in his questioning. They're going on to, you said, a different phase now?
Yeah, so Hurft's done, and then they've started to talk to a couple of other guys. They talked to a solicitor in the diocese, whose name I can't recall now, but this is a man who sat down with
well, hold on. You can't recall something that happened yesterday? I think we see this is a problem in all Australia.
It's contagious. Let me tell you what he did. This guy, he sat down with a complainant who alleged abuse and said, "We will do everything we can to help you." And then, when the criminal trial came for those things, that same man acted in defence, represented the guy that was accused.
Father, forgive us. Well, I do want...
It's staggering, isn't it? And there were moments where you're watching this, and his honour speaks, and so the camera turns to his honour, and you can just tell that he is he is, at times he's livid. He cannot believe it. And the counsel assisting, she is cool as a cucumber, but you tell underneath she is outraged with the things that she is hearing. And this guy does not present well. I mean, he stands there with his, leaning back with his. After him, we began to talk to another senior lawyer in the diocese, a lay guy, who had written a letter to the commission asking about them to reconsider some of the things that the current Bishop Greg Thompson had said. That was quite a fiery last hour of testimony. The questioning stopped at that point, and they're going to reconvene, catch this, on the 29th of November.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll have an update.
That one's still open. So between now and the end of November, a number of things are going to happen. One, that gentleman was going to start to rethink through his answers and how they're going to do. Other people are going to keep preparing. I think most importantly for us, Roger Earth will finish his long service leave. To his credit, he took a break from long service leave to come and testify to the commission. He's now back on long service leave, probably considering his position. And I would imagine before the end of November, when the commission reconvenes, he will have made a decision. Well, I would hope he would have. Personally, I think for the good of the church, you need clarity on what to do. And now we all sit and we wait. And there are still 5 or 6 witnesses to go, some of whom are substantial witnesses. We've not even heard yet from Dean Graham Lawrence, the Dean of the Cathedral, who was defrocked for child abuse, who then took the diocese to the court to challenge his defrocking, and the court threw that out. He will be on the witness chair.
That would be interesting.
Current Bishop Greg Thompson, who himself says that he was abused by a former bishop when he was a young adult, and has talked to that, and has championed, in one sense, with his current team, has championed dealing with this issue, bringing it to light. He is the last witness that will be questioned. So there's still a whole bunch more to go. It is just ongoing, and for the Diocese of Newcastle, it just must be a horrible, horrible time. Very, very challenging. And for the Anglican Church of Australia, it really requires a bit of soul searching for all of us.
Well, we do keep you in your prayers, and we pray at the end of all this that God can be glorified in this. That is our ultimate prayer. David, I want to thank you for your time, and keep up the good reporting. Here's the link to your blog, and maybe you'll catch some articles at Anglican Ink. about this story. I'm Kevin Carlson. You're David Old.
And I'm David.
I just want to let you know. And you've been watching episode 244 of Anglican Unscripted.